NATO versus Russia and allies power comparison. The Putin administration is at loggerheads with his Western rivals over Russia's relations with Ukraine. Vladimir Putin announced an attack on Donbas and called on Ukraine to lay down its weapons early on Thursday morning, but a war against Ukraine has already begun. As NATO allies, the US, UK, and other NATO countries have warned Russia's president against following the same expansionist policies that upset the region in 2014. Russia has around 900,000 active military personnel. Approximately 200,000 of them were on duty at the Ukrainian border ahead of the invasion. 74 warships and 51 submarines are in the Russian Navy, and nearly 6,000 artillery pieces are in the army. Approximately 20,000 armored fighting vehicles and 13,300 tanks are also available to the Russian military. Over 1,300 aircraft and 500 helicopters comprise the Russian Air Force. More than 500 missile launchers on Russian soil are also capable of long-range warfare. Russia's president boasted Wednesday about its hypersonic missiles, which travel at speeds above Mach 5. There are currently no methods for stopping or intercepting them. There are even some that travel at high speeds. The Kh-47M2 Kinzhal air-launched ballistic missile, for example, is supposedly capable of reaching more than 7,600 miles per hour, or Mach 10. Ukraine's army size, how big is it? The Russian army is vastly more significant than the Ukrainian army. A fifth of Russia's military personnel serves in Ukraine. The Ukrainian Navy is without submarines and owns just 2 warships, so Russia's forces at sea far outnumber Ukraine's. Approximately 2,100 tanks, 2,870 armored fighting vehicles and 2,000 pieces of artillery are deployed on land by the Ukrainian army. NATO versus Russia. Russia has around a tenth of the number of air and helicopters its air force possesses. Russia has a $154 billion defense budget compared to Ukraine's $11.8 billion, illustrating the vast difference between the two countries. NATO versus Russia. NATO criticized Russia's attack on Ukraine as reckless and unprovoked, warning that Vladimir Putin had chosen the path of aggression, which put civilian lives at risk. As Secretary-General of NATO, Jens Stoltenberg said that despite our repeated warnings and communications with Russia, Russia's actions breach international law and undermine European security. According to him, Russia must cease its military aggression immediately and respect the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine. He added, "The Ukrainian people are in his thoughts and prayers." As a response to the invasion, Poland called on NATO to reinforce its eastern flank. NATO will do whatever it takes to protect and defend all allies. Deutschlandwelle reported Poland's call for NATO to reinforce its eastern side. Our government anticipates that decisions will be taken in this context. NATO versus Russia, who will win? The Royal United Services Institute, RUSI, conducted research in 2019 that concluded British forces would be hugely outgunned if they encountered Russia across Eastern Europe. The RUSI found that the British Army and its NATO allies are critically short of artillery and ammunition, meaning that they will struggle to maintain a credible defense position if the Russians decide to launch an all-out offensive. RUSI warns that the UK is at risk of being dominated by powers at the bottom of the escalation ladder, forces that might lead to an escalation. However, the UK would not need to face off against Russia alone. Alexander Galtz, a Russian military analyst for Deutsche Welle, says that the US has an overwhelming advantage in conventional forces over Russia. Felgenhauer acknowledged that the US has a military advantage, but he cautioned that open warfare is more than each side can offer. It would be like predicting the result of a soccer game.